data is linear data, and I want to create a star mask. And you can drag that triangle off and draw it onto this image, or you can just hit the square and it will attach, it'll process the last view that was open. And there's a lot of ways to process. I mean, we could have taken the stars out of each individual filter first. We could have then stacked the stars separately, then we could have stacked the SHO separately, but this is a little easier and a little quicker. And I don't know that once I downsample it to share it on the Instagram, it's going to make a difference at the end. So it's 90% done. Again, this is a very large image. I am using the tool that allows it to use the NVIDIA GeForce video card in this laptop. I want to minimize our star mask, we'll save it for later. And then you've got a really nice starless image, except for these 3 stars, which for some reason it doesn't think are stars. But there's some really cool pillars in the Pelican Nebula. I don't know how well they're coming out up there. I guess I should be looking up there. All right. So at this point would be a good time to do noise reduction, but there's not a whole lot of noise in this data, and the easy denoise, which is a really nice script, and I told you guys at the beginning to get the easy sweep. So there is a script, and I've added that you have to follow the instructions on Google. When you download it, it'll have a nice instruction sheet, and you can do deconvolution, you can do denoise, you can do dynamic range, you can do a soft stretch. All of these tools I've used and like, but I don't use all the time. So this would have been a time where I would have said, use the easy denoise, and I would have walked away and made a cup of coffee, and I would have come back and we would have finished. We're going to skip that step for today because it would have taken, again, 20 minutes. And so now we're going to work on the nebulosity, and we're going to do a permanent stretch. And there is a script for generalized hyperbolic stretch. And it is a little bit more complicated than the serial version that you saw this morning. And I'm not going to do the generalized hyperbolic stretch. There's also now a process for the generalized hyperbolic stretch. Again, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this as beginners, and I'm going to do just the auto stretch using the histogram transformation function. Again, isn't that a fun word? Histogram transformation function, which means writing. That was a spot to laugh again. All right, process histogram transformation function. And so I've got my screen transfer out here, and it's got certain settings that it's already saved for me in here. And I'm going to drag this triangle down to the bottom here. And then I'm going to drag this triangle, now that it's setting to the same, onto my image, and you can see it blew out. But it didn't really blow out because it was already fake stretched. And I'll hit the F12 key, and now it's finally stretched right there. So that is the final stretch, and this is no longer linear data. So now that we've got the stretch, we can do some curves, some saturation, we can do some SCNR, which is a tool that takes some of that green out. There might be some magenta in here that I might want to get rid of. And we can do a couple of other cool things. So it looks very green up there. It doesn't look green on the screen, but we'll take care of it. So I guess the first thing we'll do is SCNR. Process SCNR, that's not SCNR, that's script. And so this is going to take the green out, and it's going to take 100% of it out if I have that amount of one. I'm going to leave some of it in, so I'm going to take maybe 75% out. So even up there without the dynamic range of the projector, the blue got bluer, and the Cygnus wall and the Pelican mounds saturation first. Again, this is up to you. You can write down your flow and you can keep doing it, but I kind of do it different each time. So the process, you want to do color saturation. They didn't even name this one saturation. They called it color saturation. I don't know what other kind of saturations there are, but we're going to do color saturation. And here, I'm going to get this round circle as a preview, real-time preview. And I'm going to start, this is about where it's at, this middle line. And I'm going to start putting points above the middle line. And then, depending on where I put these points, I'm attacking different parts of the colors. So if I put a point here, I'm increasing the magenta. Here, I'm increasing the red. And here, I'm increasing the red. And I can come over here to this round circle and undo it, and then redo it. And hopefully that's coming up there, that you can see that it's enhancing the saturation. And that's what we want. So I'm going to say accept that, apply. And it'll try to do it again. And you can decide that's how far you want to go. You can just keep hitting the square until it's way too far. But I'm not going to accept that one. And that was the preview, so now I've got this. Now, I'm starting to see, I don't think you're seeing it up there, but I'm starting to see some magenta show up in the background, which could have something to do with the signal of the sulfur. So I'm going to do a Control-I, which inverts it. And now I'm going to do the SCNR on the inverted image. And what that'll do is take the green out of the inverse, which is purple. So I'm taking all the purple out by doing an inverse green removal. So, again, don't know how that looks up there, but Control-I, it looks a lot better on my screen here. Now I'm going to do some curves. So let's do process, curves, transformation. And again, I'm going to hit the round circle for a preview. And then I'm going to hit this check mark to see where my red, blue, and green histograms are. And right now, it's going to do all three of them at once. And you can kind of do an S-curve. If you guys have been processing images, you probably know what an S-curve is. You bring up the middle as a bow, and then you bring down the dark. And well, I wish you guys could see my screen. I want to just try to make it look good up there instead of looking at my screen, because I'm really starting to see dust that's out here that no longer looks like a void, but looks like dust. And that was like an aha moment for me when I was processing this data. So I might have to overstretch it a little bit so that you guys can see that. And then you can attack each color separately. We can do a jump up, you can play around with it. Just leave your mouse, your left mouse button down, and just move it around until you like what you see. I'm actually starting to like those colors. You can play around with the hue. You can kind of start to get some teals. And Keith, the lazy geek, kind of does this a lot. He's like, I don't really know how to get what I want, but I move it around until I like it. And that's what I'm doing today. You can also adjust saturation here a little bit. And I think the alpha component is luminosity. So I'm going to accept that. And then, it's going to do one more step of that, and that's probably a step too far, maybe a bridge too far. But for today, I'm going to go ahead and take that second step. Up there on the screen, it looks really good. Here, it's way too much. So I'm going to accept it one last time. And we're going to cut it off there. Okay. So that was pretty neat. Do you guys see the dark nebula now? It's just a big dark nebula that is not a void, but is truly something three-dimensional in front of us, blocking us from that blue in the background. It looks almost like a tree trunk to me. I like that. So now is the time to get our stars back, and we have our star mask. And this was already auto-screen transferred, but it is still linear. So what I'm going to do is pull up the histogram transfer again. And I'm going to highlight this window so that I've got the screen transfer there. Drag this triangle down, and then drag this over here and sort of blow the stars out. But I'm going to hit F12 to undo it. So these are the stars that we're going to put back in this image. And I'm going to do that with pixel math here. A lot of times I take both of these images as TIFF files to Photoshop to put them back together. But today I'm going to do it with pixel math. Process, pixel math. And I'm going to do an expression editor. And I've got all these windows open. And I need to remember what the names of them are. One of them is called Star Mask, which is handy. So I double click it over here and it puts it to the left. Hit the plus button, because this is actually pixel math. And I believe image 9 is the image we're working on. I'm going to add those two images together. So in the star mask, those pixels that were stars have a certain value, and there are no values in the black areas of the star mask. So when I add the two together, it should put the stars right back. So I hit OK, and I'm going to tell it to make new images. I do like new images. It's also, I really like the way this looks. So I'm going to apply that. And now we have an image that is nearly finished with stars in it. Now, you can do a lot of star reduction because some of these stars are loaded. But that's where I'm going to leave today's processing of these three files. But again, we have the QR code from the beginning, and you've got a hyperlink to this data, you can play with this data. And I was talking to you earlier about finding something on AstroGAN and liking the framing. And I also want to show you the tool in Photoshop that I have never found any other tool that does this. It's called Star Alignment. And I used to rotate and stretch and try to fit pictures in Photoshop with transparencies and overlap it and like make sure that the stars are perfect. And this has a star alignment tool that does it automatically. Now, one thing I'm going to do real quick is when you have all this data at the top that's bad, is do a dynamic crop. This is image 11. I'm going to drag this off and create a clone of image 11, and then I'm going to do a dynamic crop. So all processes, and I'm saying the names of the things, so that's what I say myself, so I know where to find the dynamic crop. And then in here, you just build a box that crops all that out. And you apply it, and so now that's our finished image, but the image is still way bigger than anybody's screen. If I go, right now it says 1 to 7, if I go 1 to 1, that's how big this image is. If I hold down the space bar, I can use my mouse as a pan tool, and that's how big this data is. So it's really too big to share on Facebook or Instagram. So, and plus Facebook and Instagram are going to do compression for you. So if you do the compression first, you're miles ahead of the game. So process, and this one, I'm going to do geometry. No, I'm actually going to do resample. And we select the target. This is image 11. It tells us that that's 8,200 pixels wide on the long side. We want that 2040 8, because that's 1024 times 10x2, and most screens are no bigger than 1024. So if somebody looks at this at 100% when we're done, they're going to see it full resolution. And it won't look like it lost anything, and if anything, it'll hide some of the noise that we've got in there. So I'll process that, and so now it looks like it got really small, but now when I zoom in 1:1, it's a good size. You see that? So this is something that I'm going to file save as, and I would say I want to save this as a JPEG, so I'm going to share it on Facebook. And I would just pick quality highest, 100. And now that is a JPEG that is 2048 pixels wide on the long side, and I can post that to Instagram, post that to Facebook, and it's not going to do a compression and lose what I'm seeing on my screen. Now, one thing to realize is, just like there's a difference between that image and the image on my screen, there's also a difference in the image on your iPhone. So it's a good idea to send the image from your computer to your iPhone and see how other people are going to see it on their iPhones. Because the color calibration on your monitor might not be very good at all, and you think it looks great, and then you see it on somebody else's phone, but that's not what I posted, and it's like you're looking at your post, you're like, oh my gosh, I got to delete that and change it. So I always like to email it to myself and then open it on my phone. So that's 2048. I'm going to open up another image now. One that I found on Instagram. And this one left a lot of green in, but I liked it. And it was actually mirrored, so they might have been using a reflector instead of a refractor. But I really liked the framing here because it caused me to look at the dark nebula differently than I'd ever looked at it before. It was different than I was looking at it in the past, and so I saw it differently. And I would like to see what my data looks like in this framing. And what is there an easy way to do that? We don't know until I show you. So image 9 we don't need. Image 11 clone, we already saved that. So we're going to go back to image 11. And this is the one we haven't resampled yet. And we want to frame it up just exactly like this. So we're going to cut out almost all of the North American nebula, and we're going to get those mounds from the Pelican, and we're going to get LDN 935. One problem that we have is this one's mirrored, so we need to mirror our data first. We're going to process, and this is where I'm going to go to geometry, fast rotation, and I'm going to pick vertical mirror. And so now my data is mirrored to that, and I'm going to go look at this and see what size this is. I'm going to go process, resample, because that'll tell me real quick what this scale is. And if I click this one, look, the target is already 2048, so this person already knew to resample when they're sharing to 2048. So when I do my star alignment, it's going to automatically make my image crop to this size and then also already 2048. So I'm going to do process, star alignment, and this is something that you'll learn if you manually do your stacking. But it's a tool that I use many times if I've got old data that I have and I want to add HA data to it. I can do the star alignment and it frames it perfectly. And then if I want to throw the HA in later in Photoshop, it's already perfectly sized and rotated. And I don't have to worry about trying to screen stretch it and possibly get two pieces of data that don't overlap properly. So reference web image is going to be the one that I found on AstroBin, and that's the Grandin LDN 935. And then I'm just going to drag that triangle over to my image, and it's going to find the same stars that are in my image and the same stars that are in his image, and it's going to rotate and crop my data to that size. And this is our finished product for today, and I think it's print-worthy. I think we can hang that one on the wall. So that's my presentation, and I would love to ask if there's any questions, because I've run up against, we've got a few minutes here for questions.
mentioned the difference between art and science. How much of what you're doing is art? How much is science? And do you worry about over-processing your data?
Okay, so that's a great question. How much, and the question is talking about science, talking about art, and then the blurring of that between it, and then how much do I worry about over-processing? And it is up to the artist, and I consider ourselves artists, but also we're using real data, stuff that is actually out there. And so I see stuff on Facebook that is way over-processed, and I cringe at it, but I don't call people out on it because they're really happy with it, and I want them to be happy. I have over-processed the Orion Nebula in the past, to the point where I thought it was almost ugly. I shared it and it got more likes than I've ever got. And I was kind of embarrassed that it got more likes than what I really liked, you know. So I'm using the tools to enhance the data. If I'm not going in there and painting new structure in there, I don't feel like I've crossed the line. I'm bringing things out that you couldn't see before that was really there. I'm not adding things that aren't there. Now maybe, you know, somebody says, well, that's not real. Well, no, it's not true color. It's not real. But all of that data comes from real stuff. And that's where I like to be. And at some point, you know, when people ask the question of, is a composition, you know, still art? I mean, it's still art, but you know, if you take things from two different places and put them together where they don't really exist, it really becomes more art than science at that point. This, I still think, is a really good Venn diagram of art and science.
I got a question, Nate.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just looking at the color in this final image here, is the color in this image, because there's more than one palette, I assume you use color palette within PixInsight, is that right?
Yeah, so
Okay, so is the final color here, does it have more to do with the data set or the color palette?
So when we first did the color combination, that had to do with the color palette. Then the bending of the curves and the increasing of the saturation has to do with the person sitting at the keyboard. So it's more personal preference, and I actually hit a button that I normally don't hit, and it got me somewhere where I was happy to be, so I just kept going.
Yeah.
So there are, you know, multiple different ways to deal with narrowband data. There are multiple different color combinations. Dylan McDonald has generated a website where you can load your grayscale images in your SHO, and it will come up with like 30 different combinations of that data, and you can pick the one that you really like the best. That's a pretty cool tool. The two that I use the most are SHO, which is Hubble, and HOO, where you put hydrogen in the red, which is really where hydrogen belongs, and you put oxygen in both the blue and the green, which makes it teal, which is really where oxygen belongs. So it's actually just a bicolor image at that point, even though you're displayed it in red, blue, green. It's really just hydrogen and oxygen. And things like supernova remnants really look good there, like the Cygnus loop, the Veil Nebula, really looks good in HOO. Let me go back to my presentation and get back to it real quick. I want to show you guys, this is where we could have ended up. This is a gradient removal and just an RGB. The background extraction probably is to me, it was worth the cost of PixInsight because I was taking pictures in Bridgeport, West Virginia, where I had a big light dome, so all my pictures had this gradient down at the bottom. So there's another version that we just walked through. So here are some YouTube channels, there's hyperlinks in my slide deck, different channels that I've watched over the years, and I highly recommend all of these. This is a hyperlink to my AstroVid page. If we go here real quick, and now I'll go over everything. That clock's fast, which is
That's
nice.
awesome.
Yeah, so if we look at part of the veil in HOO, this is a real diffraction spike, and I used a trick that Nico Carver taught me by putting string across the front of my telescope. But Hubble, or James Webb had just come out, and I've seen a lot of 6 spike stars, so I made 3 strings across the front of my refractor, and I went out and shot this with that on there, and I got a real diffraction spike that is a 6 spike. Just kind of fun. But this has got some amazing filament data in it. While we've got time, I'll show you probably one of my funnest projects that I've ever done is this image, which is of the Cygnus area, Satyr area, the crescent, the butterfly, North America pelican, clamshell, and the Cygnus loop. It shows up okay. If I open up my email here real quick, I can show you what that was. It was an 8-panel, one-night marathon in SHO. So I had a 135 camera lens, 135 millimeter broken lens attached to a ZWO filter wheel and ZWO monochrome camera. And I took 2-minute images, 5 of them. So 10 minutes in sulfur, 10 minutes in hydrogen, 10 minutes in oxygen of each panel, all 8 panels in one night. And then it took me 3 days to process it because of how much gigabytes of data that generated. So this is what those panels are. You can see Cygnus loop here, you can see the butterfly and the crescent here, and you can see North American and clamshell here. So I laid this out in the ASI or planning tool, and I let it go through the plan, and it generated me a thumb drive full of data, which I then let my computer work on. I would come back literally hours later on each filter, and then have to merge those panels together in the mosaic to get really probably my favorite image. There's just so much going on in this area. I would be happy if I only had access to this part of the sky forever, you know. Any other questions?
You said that some tasks take like 20 minutes or hours. What are the computer specs you're using?
Okay, so okay, I've got a Ryzen AMD 9 6000 series and a GeForce 3060 GPU.
What's the RAM?
I believe it's 16 gigabytes.
On the GPU, how much RAM you got in the GPU?
Oh, I think it's 8.
Oh, 8. That's
I
good.
think. Is there a quick way to tell that? Can I just ask him to tell me specs?
Are you looking for like how much memory is in your video card?
Yeah.
It should be under your system manager.
You go to Windows
Just
settings.
right click on
About your PC right
Windows.
there. About your PC.
About PC. Processor. Okay, this is cool. Install RAM 16.
If you have the NVIDIA GeForce stuff on there, it should also tell you. Look down at the panel. There you go. Your NVIDIA control panel should tell you that.
So it's a 3060. I don't know where to find out how much.
It looks it's pretty good, but it'll probably similar to what I have. So it looks pretty good. Is that a newish computer?
It's newish, yeah. And it was off the shelf from Best Buy. I watched them. Best Buy like rotates their computers that they have on sale. And so every other week, a different computer will be $200 off.
But
And I was
someone with
looking-
an older computer would take much longer, right?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. AMD seems to have a few more cores and a few more threads, and PixInsight really likes to use multi-threaded parallel processor. So I aim